Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing this morning?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Good. We are here today. Thanks for attending the roundtable on home inspection. I have selected a few participants, or I should say, you graciously volunteered to talk a little bit about home inspection and the roundtable as far as home inspection, the home inspection process, and basically on what home inspectors can do to better their business and maybe better their services. That's all this is about, okay? Kind of getting information from the real estate agent on what helps them select the home inspector that they refer, okay? I have 4 people here today attending. Why don't we just go around the table and introduce yourself?
Peter Stefaniak, Stefaniak Group.
Bob Selensky, Parkway Realty.
Stacie Purko, Keller Williams.
John Gscheidmeier, Remax Service First.
All right, thanks for being here, everyone. Let's start out with this, and we'll kind of just go from person to person, and if you want to pipe in afterwards, that's fine. John, let's start with you. Do you have a favorite home inspector that you choose for home inspection, or do you not? And if you do, why? Why do you have a favorite home inspector? What makes him your favorite?
Well, I mean, I think we all know that, you know, keeping yourself out of the liability trick bag,
Mm-hmm.
you can't necessarily dictate and direct people to one particular person.
Mm-hmm.
We have a list, I think, of 4 or 5 people that we give to our agents, and we just tell them, and we tell our clients too, that they're free to pick whoever they want. This is a list of people that our previous clients have used with success. They enjoyed working with them. We tell our agents to get to know inspectors and their process, and if they have other people they want to add or subtract from the list, so be it. You know, certainly we don't get anything out of it. We could never get anything out of it. We wouldn't want that. But just giving people options, and we tell our clients, you should investigate them. You should check out their site. You should check out what they do, and pick one that's best for you.
Okay, great. Bob, why do you have a favorite home inspector, if you do? What makes him your favorite?
I guess I'm going to say that I have like 3 or 4 favorites,
Mm-hmm.
you know, ones that have impressed me over the years. And, you know, it takes a lot to impress me as far as like your technical skills and your communication skills, something that, you know, the client's going to relate to. But if you make the list, you know, there's, like John said, you know, 4 or 5 inspectors that are on the list. And then when I send out the email with that list,
Mm-hmm.
big bold letters, and you can choose one of your own. So give them their phone number, the website, check it out, make the calls.
Do your own due diligence.
Right.
Got it. Peter, what do you think? Your favorite? Why is he your favorite?
Definitely because of knowledge and because of background and because of, are you experienced in HVAC, plumbing, electrical? Are you, construction, or are you somebody that just took a class to be a home inspector? I like people that understand top to bottom a house. I also like people that are good educators. I want my buyers to feel comfortable that you're knowledgeable enough that, you don't want to miss anything. I don't want to call a year later that something
Right.
was missed. So,
I can appreciate that.
yeah, and it's my reputation too. If I refer somebody, I've heard in the past where people talk to mom and dad and they say, oh, don't pick the one the realtor wants because they're just going to pick somebody that's going to go through real quick. And I'm like, no, it's the exact opposite. I want my inspector to locate all the defects now. I want to deal with it before the deal closes.
Great. Stacie, why do you have a favorite if you do? What makes him your favorite?
I probably have a handful,
Mhm.
like I think everybody here. And I think one of the things that's been really important is a home inspector who's really good at communication, education. I think all of that's really important. I let all of my clients know, here's my list of 3, 4 home inspectors that, my buyers have worked with in the past, I've worked with in the past. They've had a really good experience. Here's their contact information, their website. I do suggest that they check them out. One home inspector may not be the best fit for buyer A. Maybe it's
Right.
a different home inspector.
You're
And
correct.
finding that fit, I think, is really important. And at the end of the inspection, I want my buyer to feel confident walking away from it and walking away from the inspection. So those are probably some of the key components for me.
Great. You mentioned, I remember in a side conversation, personality had a lot to do with it, right?
Has a lot to do with it.
A lot to do with it. And that probably goes hand in hand with the client. You got a real passive client. You don't want this big bear in a china shop going through the house, right?
Right, yep, exactly.
Okay, all right. How about turnaround time on reports? What is expected? What is needed? What do you like to have done? As far as, hey, I did the inspection today, what do you expect for turnaround time? John?
What I don't like, because I think, there are inspectors out there that still use, written papers, and that's fine. There's no photos. It's kind of a bare bones. But I don't think those inspectors are certainly keeping up with the times and technology and the needs of what people expect today. So that's kind of one extreme. I expect more than that. I expect within a day or two at the very latest. We're in the middle of a negotiation. We've got finite amount of times for deadlines. And so a lot of the inspectors that I've seen within that day or the very next day, you're getting that report. But correct me if I'm wrong, your software allows you to do those things as you go. It's not as if somebody's putting this all together at the end with a separate link for photos. I've seen that too.
Right.
It's frustrating to me. So your software allows efficiency, which then trickles to me and the client so that we can continue to do what we need. Because we may have to get experts in
Right.
and do all those other ancillary things that come after that subsequently to the report.
Got it.
Yeah.
Peter, turnaround
Yeah,
time?
that's a really good question because it's an anxious period for everybody. It's especially anxious for the seller and for the listing agent. And so I like the fact I want that report within 24 hours and most agents will get you the report right away before they even begin negotiations. When you don't get a report and when you don't get any contact, as the more time that goes by, I think my thought is always there's something wrong. Whereas the other side might be thinking, oh, I have 7 days in my contingency. I don't have to get back to them right away.
Right.
I like the report right away. I want the report right away if it's my listing so that I can at least approach my seller and say, because for them, when they look at it, it's just, oh my God, they really were thorough. But I want that stuff right away so I can
Anxious.
begin the process to soften the blow and hopefully start to negotiate.
Bob,
Yeah, I mean,
the sooner the better,
the
right?
sooner the better, next day at the latest. And what's frustrating from a listing agent perspective is, the home inspection is done on a Monday. You want the report Tuesday. And I expect if the buyer agent has a report, I expect the report to come to me that day as well, because the offer says promptly, get it over there so we can start looking at it to see what the buyers are going to be concerned with. I had a seller that thought his house was perfect, and really, I mean, it was in great shape, but the home inspector was very technical and he found some things wrong with the house, and he was amazed. And then he brought in professionals on his own, and sure enough, the inspector was right. But if we didn't have that time,
Right.
having that report in a timely manner, he wouldn't have been able to do all of that.
Right.
So,
And
But we find that agents sometimes, not ripping on the agents, but they want to hold that so close because that's the power I have right now. I have the power. To me, I agree with you guys.
Yeah,
I want to get it into there. They can start
Yeah.
digesting it,
Right.
seeing what's there.
absolutely.
And I just tell the listing, I don't know what's coming yet. We'll have that discussion, but I want to get this in your hands so that you guys can start seeing what we know.
Yes.
We see.
great. And then,
We actually have a question from the chat related to this.
okay,
How long when you talk about waiting too long, how long have some of you as agents
Had to
waited,
wait.
or how we're storing something in that, and that's kind of what they're asking.
days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes
Days.
the perception on agents is that because the contingency is 10 days long, that means I have this whole time, which technically you do, but is
There's
it
a
the right way
courtesy.
to approach it?
Right.
So yeah, I within a day, like Bob said, I want that report right away. Some of them wait until the buyer decides what they're going to ask for before they deliver the report. And I think it's the wrong way to do it. I think it makes it harder to try to negotiate and solve
that's
the
a good point.
problems.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point.
It definitely makes it harder.
Well, moving, you had something to say?
No, I was just going to say that I I would appreciate the home inspection report sooner, even if you don't have the radon test results back.
Yeah, a lot of people wait for that radon
Yeah.
test.
Right, and that's frustrating because I
It's
don't
an
want
anxious
to,
time.
I don't want to wait, another 2 days or 3 days to get the home inspection report because we're waiting on the radon. Deliver me the home inspection, and then when the radon's done, we'll deal with that.
Got it.
There's
Got it.
separate contingencies.
Yeah, the radon's
Right.
pass, the radon's pass fail. It's
Yep.
not like
Right.
it's,
Right,
there's no gray area.
exactly.
Well, moving on, and we'll start with John here. Same topic about reports. It's obvious that people want pictures. The more pictures, the better. I mean, a picture says 1,000 words, right? But what about colors? Do colors scare buyers?
Even as far as.
Yeah, a lot of red. I see a
being
lot of red.
Red.
hazard.
Yeah.
Well, for me, we're kind of dumbing our society down as we progress in years, to the point where we want to look at something. We want to know exactly, should I pay attention to this? Should I not? Where should my attention be? I think consumers understand green as being not a concern. Yellow meaning, yeah, this might be something you need to be aware of,
Mhm.
or maybe long-term. Red is, you should probably pay attention to this. To me, it's not a, I just want to know where I can find that, what I should pay attention to. And then, as an agent, you've got to spend the time with the buyers going through their concerns. And even on the sell side, if there's an electrical issue and the seller starts talking about giving credits, I don't know how anybody else thinks, but I don't like that. The former fireman in me says, if this is electrical that's important, would you want to give this house to a couple with 2 small kids, knowing that there's an electrical credit that they may or may not ever take care of? I guess you kind of go into your own routine, but.
Stacie, colors? Does it a yay or nay? Does it matter?
Honestly, I think it depends on the buyer. I think it goes to personality. Some buyers that I've worked with, I know that if they saw a ton of red, especially first-time home
Yeah.
buyers, I think they'd be a little bit more freaked out, and I've seen them a little freaked out, like, oh, look at all this stuff. And like, it's okay. Like, this is what we talked about. And it's going back to that conversation that you have with them before you even get to the inspection about what to expect prior to the inspection happening. You kind of set them up, but I think it depends on the buyer. And I think if you've had somebody who's bought 2 or 3 houses, I don't think color is going to matter. They've stepped through this process before. They're like, oh yeah, this is normal. But first time home buyer might freak them out a little bit.
Bob, freak out syndrome? Red?
I like thinking through this as everybody else is talking. Red, yellow, green makes sense. Okay. I looked at a report yesterday that had purple and blue and a couple other colors. And then it's just like, okay, what does purple mean? So I had to go back up to the first or second page to find out, was that a defect or what? Red was defect, but the other colors
Maybe confusing a little bit.
Yeah, but standardize on the colors. I think everybody understands red, yellow, green. And if you have a lot of red in the report, obviously there's some things that need to be dealt with.
Scare the buyer though?
Yeah, probably. But, as our job is to manage that as well, I think.
Yeah.
Pete, you agree?
To a point. And this stuff all makes me think. I mean, let's go back. Let's go back to a normalized market. When we take a buyer out, we might show them 20 houses and we go back for a second showing and then we go back again or whatever. In this market, we don't have the opportunity to do that. There might only be 1 or 2 listings on the market that they can look at, and they're interested in the one that's out there, and so is everybody else. And so part of what I do when I'm with the buyers, we talked about preconditioning them, is when I'm showing them the house, I might be telling them, well, these are things that might come up on an inspection report. And I got to be careful because I'm not a licensed inspector like you are, but
you're prepping them.
From 30 plus 37 years of doing this, I certainly recognize a lot of defects. So I prep them ahead of time so that it softens the blow and that, oh yeah, we kind of figured that was coming. A lot of that's on us to make sure we do that ahead of time, and it makes it easier regardless if the colors or not colors.
Makes it a moot point.
I try to do it so that we're not surprised.
But Stacie hit on the head, and you said the same thing. It's our job to prepare them for what's coming. especially a first-time home buyer, because you get a list of red and they're freaking out.
Yeah.
And you can see it in the face, the color drops.
They're like, this is the house I have a dream about. I'm dreaming about owning this house. And then all of a sudden now I'm totally derailed because I see all this red.
So it's our job, and you said it was the process, I can't remember how you worded it, but it's the process of getting to that point so that they understand, and that's on us. And I you know, in an age of internet leads, buying leads online, we got to get out and show them this home. You know, gone are the days of kind of really the true process of sitting down with a prospective buyer, getting to know them getting to know you, making sure it's a win-win for both of you, and then what to expect.
Sure.
That has not lost importance, but I think sometimes it gets sidestepped.
And it's scary. It's scary now because let's go back a year when the market really was getting crazy. People writing no inspection contingencies. And I never suggest that to a buyer, but I have buyers come to me now and say, well, my friends bought a house because they didn't have an inspection contingency. And I'm like, oh man.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Pete, because that is actually something we're going to talk about here. And I'll just skip to that right now. Do you know of any agents that recommend not having a home inspection? Especially in
Okay.
this market right now?
So it's to me, it should be presented as an option in order to compete,
Right.
but with a big, whoa, you know, be careful because here's what could happen. I mean, because there are
Mhm.
sometimes where it has to be given as an option. I don't like it. I tell buyers right out, I would never recommend a buyer buy a house without a home inspection. However, I'm just making you aware, you might be competing against people that are doing that. So it's the way you deliver it. I still don't like it.
Stacie, do you know anybody who recommends not, you don't have to give names, but I mean, other agents that are like, this is probably something you shouldn't do if you want the house?
Nobody that sticks out to me.
Okay.
I think if you were to ask most agents, they would want and encourage an inspection. I will say that in this crazy market, you know, even though I would completely advise against not, you know, excluding, I mean, never exclude a home inspection. But if you're going to be competitive, then what I suggest is having a inspection done after closing. So if you feel like you really need to be competitive and you're going to forego the home inspection, then I would recommend, you know, after closing, have an inspection. So get an inspector in there just so that you're aware of any potential defects that do need to be addressed.
How about, we'll go to you, John, on this. How about with new construction? Is it okay to waive the inspection? Is it a strategy? Is one even needed?
Well, 6
Or
years ago,
condos, whatever.
I purchased a home that was never lived in. It was brand new. I didn't build it. And I was able to get a 12-year, that'd be nice, a 12-month warranty. So I did the inspection during the 11th month.
Okay.
I got a chance to live in it. It was before the warranty expired, and they did find 3 or 4 things. And the builder balked at it, but ultimately we figured it out. I'm like everybody here, of course, from a liability standpoint, I'm concerned about getting sued over the next 2 years and errors and omissions being dragged into something where we didn't do anything wrong. So we have a notice on every buyer that makes an offer without a home inspection that they know we're advising you not to do it. Although I completely understand you have to in this world, we're advising you that's not advisable, but I get why you're doing it. I just don't want to be sucked into that liability vortex as an agent and as an owner.
I do think there are agents that are,
Of course, there are, we know there are.
you might, I
They're
know
recommending that?
that they don't.
Yeah.
I do.
And what's the ramifications, you think?
Oh, well, I mean, we've had this discussion in the past, Dave, how many times you get called in on an inspection after somebody buys a property.
Yeah.
I don't want that phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they come in. There's
Oh,
no
I
doubt
know.
about it.
I know.
They come in. All right, moving on here. Let's talk a little bit, just a brief question. We can start with you, Bob. How many of your clients you can say a percentage too, how many of your clients are dependent on you for the home inspection referral?
95%.
95, Pete?
Yeah, definitely.
John, you're right up there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right up there.
And by the way, when I give them that list, you know, I tell, because they'll always ask, well, who's good? And my standard response is, if they weren't good, they wouldn't be on my list.
Right.
I mean, I'm not gonna put somebody on there that's not, in my opinion.
They're
decent.
looking for the star, they're looking for the circle, that's what they're looking
But
for.
you have to find a fit for you, and so all the websites and phone numbers are there.
Due diligence, I understand,
Make some calls.
yeah.
I want to tell them that sometimes there's a reason why they're listed in order, but I avoid that.
Let's move on to pre-listing inspections. Are you in favor of pre-listing inspections or not? Pete?
I wish there were more of them. I'm in favor of them, but I think it's a fine line to walk because a buyer and a buyer agent, they're still gonna do them anyway, and it's like, I've had a few where they were done and the buyer accepted it and did do their own inspection, but I think to me, there's also that important education process that the buyer gets by attending an inspection of somebody they hired. And I think it's a peace of mind thing. I wish we always did them though, to be honest with you. I'd love to have that knowledge.
Bob?
Beforehand.
Pre-listing?
I can't say that I've ever recommended it.
Mhm.
So, especially not for a buyer to not do a home inspection.
But why have you never recommended it? What's your opinion as to the strategy of why you do that?
Well, I mean, it's really up to the seller if they really want to have somebody come through and, you know, pick through the house, so to speak, or
But-
thoroughly inspect. But you don't. But a pre-listing inspection doesn't. It really checks what, 4 points or
No,
5 points.
well,
They don't-
that was
they
my
don't go
next
through.
question is too, if there was a pre-listing inspection that just did the major components and was less expensive, would that be more attractive?
I think that would be more attractive. I'd probably recommend that more so than, you know, just foundation, heating, electrical, roof.
Right.
You know, things like that. Just the big ticket items, the items that, you know, most buyers are really
Concerned about just the major stuff. How about, is there a house, Stacie, is there a house that is more qualified for a pre-listing inspection than another one? Like say, for instance, an estate that nobody has really any idea what the condition of the property is.
I think it would be very helpful. And I think, you know, we're seeing more and more houses being sold by personal reps
Mhm.
and no condition report is filled out. I do think it would be helpful. At least you'd have something to go off of, which I think would, you know, I think would help to give buyers a peace of mind too, because they see this house that has no condition report. They don't really know, and we're not going to know, obviously, unless they want to write an offer and then do an inspection,
Right.
what's going on with it. But at least if those major components, you know, were checked off, they can go in going, oh, okay, well, we know that this is okay. Now let's, you know, let's see if we like the bones of it and everything else
Sure.
about it.
John?
So those are two very different issues in my
Yeah.
opinion. My dad passed away 2 months ago, and so we're in the process of prepping his house for sale. I was not in real estate when he bought the house, so I was not the buyer's agent. But to me, with an estate, my job is to represent the interests of the estate, and the estate has that out. We don't know. It's up to you, the buyer, and I that will be my approach for sure. Even though I've been in my dad's house multiple times, just like when I sold my mom's house several years ago when she passed away, I grew up there, and I had to disclose that I grew up there, but I had been there since I was, 20 years old. So to me, that's a little bit of a different issue. I like pre-inspections, but I think you have to understand what is likely to happen when you list this home. Because I firmly believe that every home sale is unique, that you could sell 5 identical homes, but it's going to be 5 totally different processes. So sometimes a pre-inspection, full pre-inspection is good. Remember, I sold a home in Sussex last year where we did that. We had 8 offers and not one of them put a home sale contingency in it. Or I'm sorry, a home inspection contingency. And everybody commented that they loved the fact that the home inspection was done. To his point, I mean, the buyer should be going through their own process, but my job as a listing agent is to make sure that we're getting the best offers, the most amount of money, and I think with the best peace of mind as well. I love the idea of a walkthrough at a lesser cost, But if I'm gonna do that, yes, there's a liability to the seller. They may learn about stuff they didn't know about, and now they gotta address it.
Mhm.
But they can do it on their terms. So that's one side of it. The other side is, why don't we give them the full report? If we're expecting multiple offers and competition, put it out there, give people the peace of mind. This home wasn't perfect, but at least, and I think it also eliminates, and I go back to this all the time, maybe it's just owners, I don't want the liability. I don't want that liability down the road. And so if people know about it, we disclosed it. We had a full home inspection. And I think a court and a judge or a jury would at least say that we did our due diligence and we did our part.
Yeah, I think too, agree if there's multiple offers with no inspection contingencies, boy, is it great to have a pre-inspection, because then it puts everybody at ease. But we're creatures of habit. I mean, look how long it took everybody to adapt, and a lot of people still have it, to electronic lock boxes. To me, if it was the way we always did it with pre-inspections, we would always do it and there'd be no question. But it's just, a lot of people will say, well, that's never how we did it, so I'm not going to do it. Instead of thinking the benefits through, I would love it
Yeah.
if it was done that way. It would make our job a lot easier.
Well, then the seller's gonna say, $500 for a pre-home inspection. I'm not spending that money.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
But I could
Why
make
should
it,
I have to
but I
spend
could
that
make
money?
it 10 times.
Yeah.
Really. Bob said it before. It's ultimately up to the seller. It's our job to throw out options. We can't look into a crystal ball, and they expect us to, but it's our job to present the options to them and to really culminate a process that works best for them.
Got it. Makes sense. I appreciate that. Next item here. What is the main thing? We'll go P here. What is the main thing from your favorite home inspector that is needed from you after the home inspection performed? Is it, and let me guide you a little bit.
Okay.
Is it a walkthrough, meaning, hey, he's going to give you the summary? Is it to sit down at the kitchen and go over the entire report? Is it being available to answer phone calls later? What is it that has to be done with your favorite home inspector?
To me, the main thing is, and it really all comes down to this, and we had one a couple months ago where Zach did the inspection, and buyer's mom and dad came along, seller's mom and dad came along, and spent most of the inspection. They were all looking for defects during the inspection. And so the best part about the inspection at the end, I want somebody that, how are they going to deliver that report? Because it wasn't just to the buyers, it was to everybody else. So we were all sitting around and the report was going through. And so, because we walk out of that inspection with a lot of different things in our heads.
Right, yeah.
And from my perspective, I'm just taking it all in. We always say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I'm not there trying to talk through problems, because then I'm going to send the perception that I'm just trying to save a deal. I'm trying to recognize, what am I going to be up against here based on how it was delivered to them and how they're perceiving it.
So
So that's my,
at the end, a verbal
Yes.
maybe consultation
the
as to what was
consultation and
found.
how it's presented, because they're going to go home and probably not sleep at night because they're worried about all these problems and how am I going to solve this problem
Okay.
that was arrived from the inspection. So to me, that's the most important part right there.
Stacie, good question.
I would agree. I think a summary at the end with the home inspector is really important for a bunch of reasons. One, for the buyer to kind of have a quick recap. They're inundated with a lot of information in this time period and going through the entire house. And 2, for me, as a quick summary, in my head, when I'm leaving, I'm already going, okay, so we might need somebody to, we might need an electrical guy, we might need a plumber.
Try to get the
might
ball
need a-
rolling.
Right, I'm already processing like, okay, who might I need to reach out to, as next step. So I'm prepared, when the buyer and I go through the home inspection, I'm already working ahead of it rather than behind it.
John, what has to happen?
I think real quickly, it's how the inspector delivers the message. To me, I've seen the worst where buyers literally, they wanted to cry. They thought the home was literally falling down when in fact it wasn't. So just being realistic and being available. That's what it comes down to. Just giving the buyers, an unbiased opinion on what it is without too much of an opinion, and then being available for questions after.
Bob, anything to add?
Well, you know, they need to summarize, go over the highlights, you know, the major issues found, and then also tell the buyer that the report is going to contain so much more information than what we're just talking about here.
Mhm.
So setting them up for what they're actually going to receive, I think is also something they should do, and be able to communicate it well to them.
Got it. Just kind of just a interesting question here. Has there ever been a time on a home inspection where you were left scratching your head like, I have no idea what to do with this process or what this home inspector found? Has there any, where you left the home inspection like, I have no idea? You're nodding your head, John. Can you?
Well, I remember specifically, and it was right down the road from our current office, where an inspector who had done, this was my buyers, for some reason they had hired him. And I had to tell them, I said, just so you know, this particular inspector I've never met before, until 3 weeks ago, he did an inspection on my listing. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know where this stuff came from. And
Okay,
so they hired him anyway.
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
They hired him anyway, which is fine. I was there. I usually hang out in the kitchen. You know, I just let them do their thing. I don't interfere. But the buyer's wife, who was the only one attending, called and said, John, can you come up here? We were in upper bedroom. It was January. And he had one of those moisture meters set up and he was viewing it. He said, there's water behind that wall. It was up in the eaves. And I said, how do you know that's water? He said, because it tells right here it's water. I said, well, none of us can see through a wall. So could it be just, you know, there's air getting in there? I mean, it's 5 degrees outside. Well, yeah, it could have been. But all she heard was water. There was water intrusion in the home, and it wasn't at all. We had a contractor look at it, put some insulation, and it was done.
Hmm.
So of course, I left there going, my goodness, I can't. And we've had those where an inspector gets a reputation, and
Maybe just wants to try out a new toy or
you
something.
just don't want to see his name on anything.
Pete, you've been in a long time.
Yeah, I've had situations like that, and I think a lot of it, again, is, I think Stacie brought it up about matching the right people with the right inspectors. And so just like in my business, I've had ones where I walked away from a listing going, I don't want to work with that person. There's just this, you know, you just don't click. And so I think that's part of when this stuff comes up is, like John said, you have a list of 4 or 5 people. I try to match people with somebody that I know they're going to be compatible with, because yeah, the way it's delivered or the way it's presented, it's like, yeah, I've walked away going, I could tell the buyer didn't feel comfortable with any of this.
It's like doing a disc test
Yeah.
first before.
Yeah, but it's like, but so much of it is, I don't think anybody ever just comes up with too many defects that don't exist. It's just, how do you present it to somebody and how did the buyer perceive it? So that's when that stuff happens.
Yeah,
I think.
Bob.
Well, sometimes I wonder if home inspectors feel like they're not finding enough, and then all of a sudden they have to think that,
Justify their
yeah,
pay.
justify, you know, I gotta, you know, and then they take it to the next level. So the people that are on my list, you know, I mean, they're all good, and if somebody goes off the list, you can't vouch for them. You know, you don't know what's going to come up. So, and you don't know how the inspector is going to communicate a defect to the buyers, or what their technical skills are. So I don't know.
Stacie, anything to add on that one?
No, pretty
Scratching your
much-
head?
Pretty much along the same lines. I
Alright.
agree. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to marketing. And this is just kind of a small category here. Everybody has, most likely, if you've been in the business long enough as a real estate agent, you have your favorite inspectors. What does a home inspector have to do to market to you to possibly get them to use you over your favorite one, or maybe even as a backup? What do they have to do to make themselves visible to you? John, you have any idea?
Well, to me, it comes down to education. I want partnerships.
Mhm.
I want to be able to call that person if I have a question, you know, even off the record, that on my listing somebody else at a home inspection, Dave, what do you think about this? And to be able to just know that I could call you because I have that second opinion partnership.
Mhm.
I love the fact that, and I know our office has collaborated with some of this with you, is that set up a home, set up agents that can come in, walk through a home. So, I mean, the reality is $1,500 roughly, you can get your license. You never have to have built a home, owned a home, sold a home, been in a home, inspection process. You can just sell homes now. And so for us, I like to have that partnership with education. You can help educate our people, not just what to look for in inspection, but even the components of the home and the stuff that we don't teach them.
Got it. Pete, anything?
I don't think so. I mean, to me, it's a relationship business for everything.
Mhm.
I have inspectors that I build relationships with. I also have a whole list, and I'm sure all you guys too, heating, plumbing, roofers, all these people are people that I know and trust and respect. And so that when it comes time to need you, I recommend you. When it comes time, if there's a problem with the plumbing, I got a plumber. To me, for everything, my lenders, it's all relationships. The people that are constantly pounding me for business, I always assume they have no business. That's why they're out hitting the streets.
How do
Word of
you,
mouth to me is,
how do you get in that realm? How do they get in that partnership?
even if one of my preferred inspectors is not doing the inspection,
Mhm.
if my buyer has somebody that they wanted to use, I'm very perceptive when I'm at that inspection, and maybe that person becomes part of my circle because I was impressed with their inspection.
Yeah.
To me, it's experience and it's what I perceive they can bring value-wise, and that's how I'm
So
gonna.
an email, a text, some sort of advertisement, stopping at your office, that's not going to
No,
necessarily.
to me, it's not, because in most offices, and I was a manager of big offices,
Mhm.
everybody used to run when people came to the door that wanted to sit down and talk with you, because, just like anything, to me, it's about.
You think they're selling you something?
Yeah, and it's, I like I said, I like to be the one stop for everything. Even after they buy their house 10 years later, I got people that still call me and go, hey, my faucet's leaking, can you give me a plumber?
Yeah.
It keeps me in the forefront, and when the
Yeah.
time to sell, then, and they call me for inspection referrals, people that I'm not even involved with the transaction. My cousin's buying a house, can you give me an inspector? Heck yeah, call this person.
Got it.
So to me, that's experience in the business. I don't need that. Some people might if they're new.
Mhm.
How else are they going to get an inspector?
Right. Bob, anything to add?
No,
How do they get in your realm? How can they get you to refer them?
the only way that I can think of is if I'm attending an inspection with a home inspector that I've never used before, that I haven't referred it came from the buyer side or wherever they came from. They would have to impress me enough to remember their name and talk to my seller, talk to my buyer about it, and say, hey, this guy seemed to know what he was doing, and then maybe another couple times involved with that same inspector or contractor. You remember good people.
Right.
That's what you do, and then you write their names down, and then eventually, the people that are on my list may leave the business, and you might need to replace them. So, it's all about experience and working with them in the past. That's the only way you're going to get to know them. Marketing doesn't really help.
Stacie, anything to add? I know we're dwindling down on the things to say on this subject, but I just want to give you a chance to talk on it.
I would say, I think for me, one of the only other things, obviously, besides, building a relationship and that relationship establishes trust. And, and I think that that's a big component when working with an inspector. But also I like to see sample, if it's a new home inspector, I like to see a sample inspection report. How do they
That's
fill
good,
out the reports? Do they have pictures? What does the outlay look like? Am I, sifting through 47 pages trying to find something, or is it easy for me to walk through? Because if it's easy for me to walk through, that means that it's going to be easy for my buyer to read and follow through as well.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. We're kind of dwindling down here. I just want to have a couple of shotgun questions here. Okay. Real simple. We'll go around the table. Start with you, Stacie. If your husband
Oh boy.
was a home inspector,
Yes.
would it be ethical to refer him?
No.
John?
I guess it depends. if the person was very good at what they do and you had full disclosure,
Mhm.
I'd be,
I think that's the key right
I
there.
mean,
full
Right.
disclosure.
I'd be open to it. I don't have to worry about that personally. But
Right, just to,
If they're the best person for the job and they're qualified, again, with the disclosure, heck yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
I agree. Full disclosure.
full disclosure.
Mhm.
How about this one? Should inspectors have access to the Sentry Lock? Start
Yes.
with you. 'cause
That's a
you-
really good question.
You're on top of
Because
this.
we talked about this before we started today. Is that, I'm a big believer that the buyer agent needs to be present for the inspection. So if it's in lieu of that buyer coming to the inspection because they don't want to come,
Right, right.
then I got a problem with it. But if it's a situation where you're gonna get there a few minutes earlier, if somebody does call me and say I'm running late or something, as long as my seller's aware of it, if my seller, I would, again, like the disclosure thing, if I made my seller aware that, the
Mhm. Yeah,
inspector needs to get there.
Sorry,
Bob.
quick question. Are we talking 1-day codes or are we talking?
One
that-
day codes,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I.
where I
yeah, that's
can,
what
where a home inspector can actually go on with Showtime
Yeah,
and,
Showtime,
and create a code for that day.
There are circumstances that come up where maybe you have to do it for whatever reason.
Mhm.
But I don't want it to be where it discourages that agent from attending the inspection. Because they're getting paid to represent the buyer, to know the whole situation, and they should be there. So if it's in lieu of them coming, I have a problem with it. Otherwise, I don't.
Over here, this side, Stacy?
So you're saying that the home inspector, upon scheduling the home inspection through showing time, would have an automatic button or something that he would press to give him a 1-day code to the Sentry Lock box?
Yes.
I would say that I prefer not to have that option, only because I think that the seller should be made aware if the home inspector is going to be there, because then my next question would be, if I'm the listing agent, is where is the buyer's agent? And, why isn't the buyer's agent going to be there? And I think if they have an automatic right to create a 1-day code, I think it's better if we kind of have a better handle as to, okay,
Who's all going in and out of that
who's all
house?
going in and out. And that's the one thing with the 1-day code is you have no idea who's going, the inspector, but
Yeah. John, anything to add?
I think I'd be open to it. I was on the original electronic
put their
lock
name in,
box
right?
committee when we studied this years ago. As a former police officer, I think that anything that we can do to minimize and approve access based on what our seller wants is our responsibility. I would be open to it, but I think there would have to be some rules in place so it isn't just
Sure.
automatic.
Boom.
Yeah.
Like Peter said, I mean, I can't mandate as a listing agent that the buyer's agent is there. But I've got to have those discussions with my seller about liability and risk and who's coming and going at all times.
Well, let's tail off that. And we had this a little bit before we started this meeting. Should the buyer's agent be there in the home inspection, John?
I believe so, but I mean, again, and we all know there's companies out there that have either said their agents should not attend or will not attend, or they've just said we're not attending.
Pete,
I
you have
mean,
a passion for it.
yeah, earning your 2.4% commission as a buyer agent means you're doing full service for the buyer. And I feel that the inspection is probably one of the most important things in the transaction, and how better negotiate a potential problem if you saw it firsthand.
Right.
And we are trying as realtors, our job is to solve problems. And that's why we get paid what we get paid. So I think, yeah.
And in the
it's-
public's eyes, we're not earning that pay in
Yeah.
many cases. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but from a listing perspective, if I've got a buyer's agent and said, my company policy is we don't go, or I'm not going, I got to manage that.
And the first thing I'll say to a seller, and I don't want to say it in a bad way, but how comfortable do you feel with those buyers walking through the house without an agent? How do I know they're just doing the inspection? How do I know they're not opening and closing the drawers and going through people's things? I can't police that because the home inspector's job isn't to do that.
Right.
The buyers now have free reign of the house. I don't like
Well,
that.
and the inspector's nose is in the furnace, as
Right.
it's supposed
That's
to
what I
be.
mean.
and
Right.
where the
He's not
buyer-
Yeah,
babysitting
and I
that.
don't like it
Exactly.
because then they're
It's not
have
their
free reign
job.
of the house.
Bob, anything to add? I know you go on all your inspections.
Yeah, they should be there. You can't negotiate effectively for your buyer if you're not there. I think you need to hear it firsthand. So.
Part of the business. Stacy,
yeah,
you agree with
part of
all
the
that?
business.
yes.
All right. What do you recommend? We'll go to Stacie. What do you recommend your agents or your clients do during the home inspection? Do you recommend they follow the inspector? Do you say, hey, let the guy do his work and then he'll give us a synopsis at the end? What do you like your clients to do?
I think it's important for the clients to follow along with the home inspector. Obviously, if they're crawling around in the attic, I don't expect them
Right.
to crawl around in the attic. But I think, you know, to follow them around the house. I mean, this is their opportunity to get to know, you know, all the ins and outs, what's going on with the house, any potential defects for the home inspector to show them, oh, hey, you know, I found this, and then they can see it and they have an opportunity to maybe ask questions. And so I think it's important that they're involved in the process.
Okay, John?
I agree with everything she said. I think, you know, that's the time for the agent to be there. The agent should be following the inspectors around, but I think that's a great time, like Peter said too, to learn about your house. This is your house 101.
Well,
You should learn about it by following. Let the inspector do his job, but ask questions when it's appropriate.
let's add one more onto it. How about parents? How about
I am dead set
Kids.
against that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was all going through my mind when you
Yeah.
brought that up, because again, we talked about preconditioning. To me, the home inspection is a time for the buyers to learn about the house that they're buying. And we've all had ones where they brought the kids, they brought the parents, and it became this big circus. And I think if they want to do that, let's set another appointment after the inspection where you can come through and look to measure curtains or do whatever you feel you need to do. But I'm against it. Sometimes you can't control it.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't know what's coming and they all show up. It makes for a very difficult situation. It makes it really hard for you as an inspector. I don't
does.
like it. I think we need to precondition the buyers before we do the inspection. That the inspection is for you to learn about this house. And if you want to bring other people to see the house, we'll make another appointment for that.
Got it. Bob, anything to add?
No, they should, I think that the buyers should be following and listening to the home inspector as they go through the house.
Okay. Winding down here, a couple last questions. I know, Stacie, you mentioned it, post-closing inspections. If your buyer chooses not to do an inspection, is that something you recommend to your buyer to have done? Inspections? Because we've actually had people hire us like same day as closing. What do you think, John?
I don't. I stay out of that liability. Water company, one of the questions that, hey, can you hand sample kits out to your buyers and when they buy their home or part of their inspection? And I tell them if there's well and water, it's all going to be part of the offer, but I'm not going to give your kits to my people because they go into their house after closing. They take a sample of the water, they mail it in, they get it back, you know, let's say a week later, and now they need X amount of equipment. Well, who's going to look like the guy who didn't guide him through the process properly? Me. So I just tell people, if you're going to make an offer on a home without an inspection, what you do after closing is up to you. You just need to know that I can't help you after that, no matter what you define and discover.
That's good. Good to know.
I just can't do it.
Yeah. Pete, anything to add?
No, I agree. I recommend them, they should do an inspection if they don't want to because they feel they have to make a stronger offer. I tell them what the ramifications are, but I've never suggested, well, do the inspection after closing. Because I think we're just opening up a big can of worms.
I would say no.
I've never.
I recommend. Okay. Well, that's all I have. I'm just going to give you 1 or 2 more minutes if you want to say anything about this in particular. If not, we'll close it up. I appreciate everyone being here today. We're up close to that hour right now, and I promised we would end in an hour. So Stacie, any last comments about this subject at all? Otherwise, we'll just move on.
No, I think it was a great conversation.
Good. John?
Well, I think anytime you can have open discussions like this involving what can be a contentious relationship, inspectors and agents and clients and whatnot, I think it certainly opens the door to improvements in the industry in general. I'm afraid the people that probably need to watch this and hear these messages are probably not listening. But we live in weird times, and we live in times where people are, because they have to, negotiating themselves out of protecting themselves. And I just hope it doesn't come back to bite us all in the next couple of years. That's fine.
Peter, any last thing?
As realtors, it's our duty to precondition our sellers. What could come up on an inspection? As a buyer agent, precondition our buyers, what the inspection process is like and what could happen. And it's also our duty when we take a listing to investigate that property and prepare the seller for things that might come up as a result of inspection. It makes our negotiating a lot easier when that report is delivered.
So it's not necessarily the home inspector who kills the deal.
No, I don't think so at all. I think, you know, you do your job, I do mine, and if I do my job properly, I'll be able to deal with any of the problems that you discover.
That's well said.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Bob, any last words?
Well, we'll need to deal with the report and we'll need to deal with the buyers and the sellers. You know, I think that, I lost my train of thought.
You do your job. We do our job, you do your job. Yeah, it should work out, right?
Yeah, it should, but keep in mind, you know, you're dealing with buyers and sellers here. If I'm the listing agent, I'm going to do my best to manage my seller's expectation, but I don't know what's happening on the other side. So, you know,
Right, and it doesn't always get done,
It
which
doesn't always get done because
it's just unfortunate,
Right.
so. All right, Stacie, John, Peter, Bob, I appreciate everyone being here today. I appreciate everyone out there being on the Zoom call. Any other questions, John or Jack? No. Thank you so much for attending. My name's Dave Colasari with Homesight Inspection Service. Have a wonderful day. We will have this recorded if anybody would like to view it. So have a great day.